Flight 308 took off under normal conditions, but soon encountered a sudden, violent storm. The turbulence was brutal. Passengers clutched their armrests, and the captain's attempts to calm them were drowned out by fear. The plane jolted and shuddered violently. Then, all at once, there was silence. The aircraft was never seen again. Weeks of searching yielded no wreckage, and the passengers were declared dead. Families grieved, but time passed and the world moved on. 5 years later, a plane appeared on radar, approaching an East Coast airport. The control tower was stunned. It was Flight 308. They tried to contact the crew, but there was no response, only static. The plane landed smoothly on an empty runway, as if nothing was wrong. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, expecting an empty ghost plane. Instead, they found passengers seated upright, eyes closed, perfectly preserved as though they had just taken off. No signs of decay or aging. The rescuers were horrified. The passengers looked untouched by time, as if they had been frozen in place for 5 years. Authorities sealed off the area. Forensic teams and scientists investigated but found no explanation. The passengers' cell phones, watches, and electronic devices were stuck at the time of the flight's disappearance. Messages were unsent, videos paused mid-recording, everything frozen in time. Autopsies revealed no signs of physical trauma. Organs were intact, but all bodily functions had simply stopped. The medical examiners were disturbed by fleeting moments when the faces of the deceased seemed to contort in terror, eyes wide open, mouths mid-scream. But each time they looked again, the faces had returned to calm expressions. They dismissed it as tricks of the mind, but it happened repeatedly. Rumors spread among airport staff. At night, the abandoned plane seemed alive with whispers, faint cries, and fleeting shadows. A janitor swore he heard his name called from one of the seats, but when he looked, there was no one there. The investigation hit a dead end, with no logical explanation. The plane was scheduled to be dismantled and stored as evidence of an unsolved mystery. But before this could happen, an unexpected voice message appeared on the phone of one of the rescuers. It was garbled, filled with static, but the voice was unmistakably the captain of Flight 308. We flew into something. A storm, but not just a storm. It was like time stopped. I saw them looking at us. They were waiting. We shouldn't be here. They've seen us, and now we can't leave. God help us. The recording was analyzed, but no one could explain its source. It had an eerie echo, as if it came from a distant place, far away from the living world. Then, bizarrely, families of the passengers began receiving messages and phone calls. Each one was brief, often a single word: help, lost, cold. The calls couldn't be traced, but all signs pointed back to Flight 308. After a month, the calls stopped as suddenly as they had started. On the 5th anniversary of the plane's return, families gathered at the airport. They stood near the empty runway where the plane had landed. One woman glanced up and gasped. She saw her husband standing with other passengers in the distance. Their faces were blank, their eyes lifeless. She blinked, and they vanished. Later that night, she received a final text message from an unknown number. It read, "We landed, but we were never meant to arrive." The timestamp was from the exact moment Flight 308 had disappeared 5 years earlier. The families who saw the ghostly figures knew their loved ones were still out there, trapped between life and death. Forever passengers on a flight that never truly ended, they stand together in the shadows, waiting, their empty eyes searching for a way home.
There is nothing we can't make scary.